Hello and welcome to another episode. I am Brian, the Unskilled Commander, and this is Deck Break It Down, where I take one of my decks, separate it into its components, and walk you through what I was thinking when I built it, what some of the key cards are, what the deck is supposed to do, how I went about building it, what I wanted it to do, and just as a thought experiment, seeing where it goes and what the deck really meant to be. Now, whether or not it works, that's a different story, of course. And by no means is this the best example of this kind of deck. It shouldn't be the worst, but it's definitely not upper echelons. It's just about showing you guys where I'm at. Hopefully you'll get some ideas, see some cool cards that you want to try. Maybe you have some ideas you can give me. Toss in the comments like, hey, add this card to that deck. Or maybe take this one out and replace it with this. It's a better version. I would welcome those kind of suggestions. Let's go ahead and jump into today's episode, which is Sheoldred the Apocalypse. Obviously a very popular commander, and rightfully so. 4 mana for a 4/5 with Death Touch, that by itself is a pretty solid commander, but whenever you draw a card you gain 2 life, and when your opponents draw a card, they lose 2 life. There's a lot of ways you can make this go off, and it's a lot of fun. Now, the way I have it built, it's certainly not a guaranteed win, not even close to it, because, again, all you gotta do is blow up the commander. It's just a creature. A couple board wipes or targeted removal. After 2-3 hits, it's now 8 plus mana to pay. To play it again, it's not really cost-effective use of the mana. So all it takes is a couple hits, and you're really kind of, not out of the game, but not going to be doing what you need to do. So it's not perfect, but I still really enjoy it. It's a fun deck to play, and it got some cool synergies. So let's jump in. First off, we got your lands. There are 36 of them in this deck. I'm really, after seeing some other content creators, like the Commander Mechanic, discuss land bases, I've definitely come to the, side of the fence where it's like 36 lands minimum. Obviously, there are certain types of decks that could probably run a lot less than that, but for the most part, when I build a deck, I slot 36 spots for land automatically and then start building. And it actually has helped my decks quite a bit in terms of just hitting the lands when you need them. You get land flooded a few times. I've had that happen with multiple decks, but I've been mana screwed a lot less. So I suggest, hit that 36, maybe even 37 sweet spot to start with and see what your deck's mana curve is by itself. There's nothing really special in my lands. They're pretty much swamps with a few cards that'll let you sacrifice them to go get swamps. Whether or not that's the best play, it's a monocolored deck. I still stand by the fact that things like Terramorphic Expanse, Mirrored Landscape, and a bunch of these newer ones that are from New Capenna, like Riveteer's Overlook and stuff, where it's like, sacrifice this after you play it and go get a swamp. Yeah, it's not a land. You can't tap it to use it for anything, and you have to go get one that comes in tapped. But you're deck thinning. You're playing a card that now sucks a card out of your deck and gets you closer to the really good spells that you need. I think it works. Obviously, on top here, we've got Cabal Coffer. It's a pretty solid one that pay 2, tap it, and you get a swamp for each swamp you control. Get enough out, it's a great way to almost double your mana base for playing spells. Next up, we've got artifacts. First portion of artifacts is pretty straightforward. You've got your Soul Ring, Thran Dynamo, Thought Vessel, Commander Sphere, a lot of things that you can sacrifice to draw a card because A, you want that life gain, but card draw is incredibly important in any deck. If you can constantly have almost a full hand of 7 cards to work with, you're going to be in a better position than most other players. However, we've got some key cards within the artifacts like Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves to try and protect Sheoldred. They give Hexproof and Shroud respectively. You do that as quickly as you can so that, okay, now they have to do a board wipe. They can't target the actual creature unless they target artifact removal on the artifacts first. Now you're making them, even if they do it and kill Sheoldred, now you're making them waste a lot of mana and a lot of resources on just one creature. Next, because the deck is all about making your opponents draw cards, you've got some key cards like Teferi's Puzzle Box and Howling Mind. Getting your opponents to draw multiple cards in a turn, hitting them with 2 damage every time they card draw, is going to get them closer and closer to player removal. We also have a couple things like Alamar's Archive and Aetherflux Reservoir to go hand in hand. increasing that amount of life gain you get, and maybe even using it as the old sky laser to blast the last remaining opponent and put yourself at like 3 life or something. Next up, enchantments. The enchantments are all about adding to Sheoldred. We've got Underworld Dreams, which hits your opponents for damage every time they draw a card. Dogged Pursuit. At the beginning of my end step, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life. Phyrexian Arena, that does deal damage to you, but it gets you to draw cards. So you lose 1 life, but draw cards, you're gaining 2 life, so you net 1 life gain. And I did toss in the old Sanguine Bond Exquisite Blood combo just because. There are no tutors of any kind in this, so if I hit that combo, it's pure luck on just the draw. It's in there as a secondary win con because, as I've said, they're going to be blowing up Sheoldred left and right. However, there's still a bunch of other cards in the deck that make your opponents lose life when they draw a card. So if you can get that combo out and make them in turn past turn, they draw a card, boom, you win the game. Instants, there are 9 of those. Basically, my instants are all about card exile and card destruction, getting rid of your opponent's creatures because they're going to be swinging in on you as fast as they can. So you want to blow up their creatures or ideally exile them. We got things like Defile, which is great because it's -1/-1 for every swamp you control. Murder, Devour in Shadow, things like that. Pretty standard fare for your answers category. Next up, we've got sorceries. Here's where we start to get into some really key components of the deck. We got your main one, Peer into the Abyss. That's a given. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. If you've got Sheoldred out, that's pretty much you just destroyed one player outright. Whoever's been hitting you the most or has the most life or the most threat, boom, Peer into the Abyss on you. You draw half your library, taking 2 damage per card, so it's, half your library is going to be 40 cards minimum most times, maybe even 30 if someone's milling or doing a lot of craziness. That's still 60 life. They're not going to have 60 life most of the time. And then even if they do survive, then they still lose half their life. A favorite of mine, Vicious Rumors. It's a 1-drop that does a crap ton of stuff. Deals 1 damage to every opponent. They all discard. They all put a mill card, and you gain a life. For 1 drop, that's amazing. Then the rest of them are all about making target player draw cards. So the best part about that is you can use it on yourself, or you can use it on your opponents, depending on what your situation is. Running out of mana, running out of answers, use it on yourself, draw some cards. You're looking pretty, then use it on your opponents, make them draw, and take some damage. The second half of this deck, besides card draw, which I not stumbled upon, but realized, if you're making all of your opponents draw cards constantly, they're going to draw into their answers. They're going to draw their best cards. So yes, it sounds like a great, oh my gosh, Sheoldred's going to do 2 damage every time I draw a card. Yeah, but you're going to get to your good stuff much faster. Unless I play stuff like Arterial Flow. Each opponent discards 2 cards. Unnerve. Each opponent discards 2 cards. That's the second half of the deck, making your opponents discard cards. So you make them draw a bunch, then you make them discard 1, 2, 3, 4 cards in 1 turn. Cool. You drew, and now you're gone. You have no hand size, or you just, you lost something. Because if you're keeping your best card, then you might be tossing away all your mana or something else to try and keep that destruction spell. Last but not least, we've got 19 creatures. This is a combination of everything. We've got things like Nezumi Informant and Burglar Rat, which each opponent discards a card. Each opponent discards a card. We got some of the rats like Gnat Miser, which each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 1, and that's a static effect for as long as the creature's on the field. But then we also have stuff like Cezanne, Perverter of Truth, and Fate Unraveler, and the newest Orcish Bowmasters, where it's like every time an opponent draws a card, they take a damage or take 2 damage. So you get a couple of those out with Sheoldred. Now, every time an opponent draws a card, they're taking 5 damage. Then you drop something like Howling Mine or anything else, or a targeted spell on one person, make them draw an extra 3 cards, you're hitting them for a massive damage. It's not super easy to pull it off a win with it, because again, you're going to be targeted pretty quickly once people realize how powerful Sheoldred is, but it's a lot of fun to play. there you have it, my Sheoldred the Apocalypse deck. Hope you enjoyed the video. Maybe give it a like. Hope you come back and check out the other videos on my channel. I will see you next time.